To the House, thank you.
Call Dr. Megan Woods.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm pleased to be able to take a call on this to address some of the speeches that we've heard in this House this afternoon about this legislation. I would describe some of the claims that we've heard in this House about partnership schools as truly extraordinary. First of all, we had John Banks stand up and tell us that partnership schools will transform education in this country. And this is about where my agreement with Mr Banks finished, because yes, they will. They will introduce state-funded education for profit. They will introduce unqualified and non-registered teachers into our classrooms. They will be run by individual contracts, the way in which this government seems to want to govern our country. Government by contract, and it will mean a loss of boards of trustees and local communities having a say in how their schools are run. But then Mr Banks really hit the nail on the head when he told us this was a paradigm shift, a world-class business opportunity. Well, I thought we were here debating the Education Amendment Act and not talking about where the mates of this government could make their nets buck, because that's what it seems to be boiling down to. And then we had an equally extraordinary speech from the chair of the Education and Science Select Committee, Cam Calder. Now, I've sat through the hearings on this bill. I'm a member of that Select Committee. And to sit there and hear 2,100 or read 2,100 submissions of people who told us very good reasons why it was that charter or partnership schools were a bad idea for education in this country, and then hear a number of those submitters denigrated by the chair of that committee is truly extraordinary. Well, Dr Calder told us that the teacher unions should have behaved like their Swedish counterparts. They should have rolled over in the way the Swedish teacher unions did. Well, Dr Calder, let me tell you, the educational achievement in Sweden stopped with the introduction of freedom schools, and even the Maxim Institute will tell you it was a failed model. The chair of the Education and Science Select Committee should do his homework before he comes to this House and bandies examples about. It was truly 10 minutes of union bashing. How dare teachers in this country and their representative bodies make submissions on a bill about education. This shows today the ideological blinkers that this government is wearing with their coalition partner, the ACT Party, are firmly in place. This is about ideology. This is about votes in the House. The best he could come up with was 10 minutes of union bashing. Well, Dr Calder, these are educational professionals. These are the people charged with teaching our children who do have opinions on education and the future of our education system in New Zealand. And you know what, Dr Calder? I do not know one teacher who would ever offer an apology for the fact that they do care about the education system in New Zealand and they do care about the education of our children. And teachers, New Zealand teachers I speak to are in favour of change. To claim that they don't want to see any change is simply not true. What they want to see is change that works. And the legislation we have before this House is in no way change that works, because this is a sad day for New Zealand children, because we are getting a step closer to a scheme that was cooked up over a cup of tea to assure that this government held the votes in this parliament. Instead of a government focus on making all our schools the very best that they can, we've got a government that has put the profit before our children's education, and that is not something anybody in this House should be proud of. There's crocodile tears and words coming from the opposite side that this isn't about profit, this is about choice, this is about freedom, this is about ACT Party values. Well, then I challenge members of the government to vote for my colleague Chris Hipkins' amendment to this bill that says, fine, take the profit motive out of it, if you really do believe it's not-for-profits and iwi groups, then vote in favour of the supplementary order paper that removes the ability for people to make a profit from these partnership schools. Because until you do, your words are hollow. They are meaning... Sorry, Mr Speaker, your words are not hollow. Because until the government does vote for the supplementary order paper, they are just going to be hollow words. Words with little meaning and a thin veneer of what they are trying to do, which is open up new business opportunities for their mates. Labor does strongly oppose this bill. We won't agree to National's charter schools in any way, shape or form. The people need to know that the ongoing funding and support for charter schools will not be guaranteed under a future Labor government. We will not guarantee any charter school established during the term of the present government the right to integrate into the state school system. And no further charter schools will be established under a Labor government, and legislation allowing for their establishment will be repealed. And why is this? It's because children in New Zealand deserve better than the legislation we are debating offers them. They deserve more than a dangerous gimmick and a political stitch-up over a cup of tea between John Key and John Banks. Education is not a business. It is about the future of our children. There is no evidence that charter schools lead to improved results. In fact, the overseas evidence has proved that more often than not, charter schools fail. The evidence base for making the case to establish charter schools is simply not there. This is simply a government that is continuing its modus operandi of governing us by contract. This is the trader's approach to education and not the educationalist's approach to education. Under this legislation, all we are getting is contracts that will not deliver for our children. Unqualified and deregistered teachers into our classrooms. How is this going to be better for the education of our children? Would anybody in this House allow an untrained doctor to treat their child? The answer is more than likely a resounding no, so why would anybody in this House want an untrained teacher to teach their child? If the government's claims that it's about educational achievement are true, then why are they not following all the evidence that shows within the OECD that where the tightest teacher registration occurs, you have the highest educational outcomes? The simple fact of the matter is, if this was a government that did care about educational outcome, teacher registration would be high on their agenda. We heard from submitter after submitter to the Education and Science Select Committee about what could be done, even about the utilisation of people that didn't have formal teaching qualifications under the present education system we have. The difference is that they fell within a recognised system and that they were part of an overall scheme where registration was valued. They were not thrown in front of our children. The other objection we have to this, amongst many, is that and my colleague Tracy Martin from New Zealand First spoke of this, there is no compulsion on charter schools or partnership schools to deliver the agreed curriculum. We have a very good curriculum in New Zealand. It is well developed and in many ways it is the envy of the world, but there is no onus on charter schools to deliver this. The tragedy of this, and this is being lost by the rhetoric from the government on this, is that New Zealand has a world-leading education system. Many of our approaches are seen by others as innovative around the world, and our parents and our communities have some of the most say in the world in governing our schools through our boards of trustees model. This legislation does away with that for charter schools. Communities and parents will not be the governors of them. Contracts and boards are what going to govern this type of education in our country, and this is not good enough. Submitter after submitter came to Select Committee and told us this would not work and they did not want it. They did not listen to them. They did not listen to them about the flexibility. And the other important piece of the puzzle for this, for me, is of course that Christchurch is being seen as one of the sites where we're going to experiment on our children. We've seen in New Orleans what happened post-Hurricane Katrina. Christchurch is being eyed up by the government as a prime site for experimentation. Our schools are being closed. We're going to hear about that later this month. The children of Christchurch, who have already been through so much, are going to become the guinea pigs of this government and the price of a coalition deal cooked up over a cup of tea. The poorest children in the eastern suburbs of Christchurch are going to be it. We oppose this bill.
Mr Speaker.
I call Colin King.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. It's a pleasure to take a call on the second reading of the Education Amendment Bill.